Baroness Annette von Droste-Hülshoff was a beloved 19th century German poetess who became famous for her lyric poetry and her ballads. She also composed classical music. She suffered from poor health all her life and felt very restricted by the limitations her aristocratic family set for her as an unmarried noblewoman who longed to be a serious writer. Despite much tragedy and betrayal in her private life caused by her family's intrigues and her bad health, she kept fighting for her dream. By the end of her life, she had received some recognition for her writing and later became considered to be one of Germany's most important poets of the 19th century. This summer, I got to visit the little town and castle of Meersburg at Lake Constance in the very south of Germany, where she spent the last 7 years of her life and where she wrote some of her best work. She felt deeply inspired by this place. It was truly special to walk through the rooms where she had lived and worked, to see some of her original handwriting on those old letters and pieces of paper, and to imagine how she stood right here at the same window, looking out over the lake, over the little town beneath her, and feeling so inspired and so at home. She passed away in this room at the age of 51. The artist, the place, and 2 of the poems she wrote here inspired the creation of a series of mixed media art journal pages, which I am sharing in this video.
Yes, so here's a book with her poetry, and this is my favorite oil painting of her with this amazing color palette, which seems to be this burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, and I also use these colors as a color palette for my art journal pages. And here's another beautiful postcard of a sculpture, and because she was a poet, I also used words in my art journal pages, which I usually don't do, but I have these beautiful stickers with beautiful lines that sound very like little pieces of poetry, and so I attached them to the pages, whatever I found fit. And this is the castle again that she lived and wrote her poetry, her most beloved poetry, for the last 7 years of her life. And I sketched it, and this is a little piece from a sugar sachet, a little sugar package from the cafe that is right here on the castle. And I also printed out 2 of her poems. That one is called The Old Castle, or The Old Fortress, which is a poem about this castle. I printed it out on vellum, and it's just really beautiful. It's very long, so it's like two pages. And I also have it here in this book, Das alte Schloss. So she talks about how she is looking at this beautiful lake. You can see it here, Lake Constance. In the background, I think those are the Swiss or Austrian Alps. I'm not quite sure. It's right at the border between Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. And she has another famous poem. It's called In the Tower, or From the Tower. And there's actually an old drawing. I made a photocopy and I used it for a sketch. This is my own interpretation. And this is also based on a poem called Am Turme. So she's writing about how she stands on this balcony and looking down on the lake and over the little village, and how she longs to be free like the birds, and if she were only a man, then she could be free and travel and didn't have to stick to all those social norms and rules and feel so restricted as she felt in that time as a woman. And when you open this, you can also see I have also printed that poem here, again on vellum. And I tried to make everything look really old and vintage, and like she actually used this as if this was her little diary. This is like pages from an old book, and like the very first pages. And I just put a lot of ink on there and splatters and tried to make it look very vintagey. And yeah, and then there's mixed media, acrylics. This is just some tissue paper with gold leaf. And here, oh yeah, this is one more thing I want to show you. This is a photograph I took in her room in the castle. And there's this beautiful bust, beautiful piece of sculpture, and when I printed it on the vellum, this happened. It came out like this, the ink smeared, and it made me feel like her head, like her thoughts, her emotions, everything that she wrote down has come alive again for a moment. I can see it move yeah, it seems like her spirit comes through, and I really love this. Thoughts that whisper to my heart. And this is also a photograph I took of a dahlia flower in the gardens in a little island that's quite famous in Germany as well. It's an island, and it was turned into a beautiful garden, and it was dahlia season. So I also printed out that photo also on vellum and put it there. And I work a lot with dried flowers that I collected to give it this kind of vintage and very romantic feminine touch.
This video is a dedication to the woman who longed for a fulfilled life as a self-actualized and respected human being and artist. A woman who longed to be free like a man, as she wrote in one of her poems. Instead, she wrote, "I have to be still and well-behaved like a good child, and only secretly am I allowed to let my hair flow free with the wind."